how Harry's predictions and the rebuilding of the Empire progresses. So anyway, TV show. Basically, I guess close to following most of the first book, but as I said, I haven't read the books in about 40 years, so I can't remember the finer details of the stories. But it was a very good show, and from what I remember, it fit exactly in fact, it enhanced the experience of reading the books. There are aspects of the TV show where I never really appreciated the depth of vision, if you like. But it's sort of when someone takes a thing and runs with it, they can do a very good job. I know there's they just released the second Dune film, which I haven't seen any of them. Now, I was never really a big Dune fan, but from what I understand, this is another epic story where the writers are fans. So they've taken what was written and are trying to imagine it on the screen, much like Peter Jackson did with Lord of the Rings. It's an imagination that you're trying to do an epic work justice. And talking about Lord of the Rings, yes, I know it was there were things missed, parts of the story they glossed over which didn't really affect the major arc, but if you're a fan of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, you'll say, they missed out that bit, but what they did do was a very honest representation of the story that Tolkien wrote. And Patchwork, good morning, welcome to Saturday. How are you doing this week? So anyway, I mean, my thing is if you're honest to the material, there are some things I'll read a book and say, I don't enjoy that book. So when the movie comes out, it's like, I'm not going to bother because I didn't like the book. I didn't like what it was all about. I think from my experience, something a movie or TV series based around the Dragon Riders of Pern would be an interesting thing. It would probably be very expensive because dragons and riders riding dragons, and that's probably quite a lot of technology. But I enjoyed that. I enjoyed David Eddings' Belgariad, and he wrote 4 series of books, although in reality he wrote 2 stories and then did each of them twice, sort of thing. But again, they were epics. Whether you enjoyed the writing style, the stories themselves were well thought out. And yet there's other stuff I read and it's like, no. Never really been into comic books. So I skip the comic book genre. I am aware of comic superheroes, but more because of campy 1960s TV shows than than actually reading the books or the comic books themselves. So how's my Axiom doing? It's doing. So I've enjoyed things like the Avengers. Why aren't you working? Oh, come on. Okay, weird. And I think in part because they got a good set of actors. I liked the actor who played Thor. I liked Robert Downey Jr. And they had a good, strong cast there. There are some things I'm not so interested in. Sometimes an actor will put me off. And yeah, I'm not going to watch that because I really don't like the actor. Not a big fan of Tom Cruise. Now, I'm not going to say his movies are bad, I'm just going to say I'm not a big fan. But I did not like the first episode, or the first Mission Impossible movie. I would see that, but it was a good movie, but it was basically, Jim Phelps, that guy who was leading the Impossible Missions Force through the TV show. Yeah, he's actually a bad guy and a spy. And it's like, yeah, you're just doing that to establish Tom Cruise as the main player, not so that you can, and you're basically destroying the legacy that was Jim Phelps from the original series. So I haven't watched any Mission Impossible since the first one. I mean, yeah, if you'd gone and said, okay, Jim Phelps an old guy, and he's not up to running the Impossible Missions Force, but let's at least acknowledge what he did and move along. Yeah, it was, I don't know. How am I doing? I'm doing okay. Anyway, what else has been going on? Oh, yeah, I've been mostly housebound because of my hip and back lately. However, did go out on Sunday, and local farmers have finished ploughing all their fields, cultivating all their fields, or whatever it is they've been doing with them. And I don't know if they're planted, but it's possible some of them are planted. We don't have, the weather hasn't been as bad as it has been in Minnesota. I've been watching Millennial Farmer, and as of his last video, he was just getting ready to go out and till the fields. It's still a little bit too damp, and he's had a couple of freezes. But the ground is basically warm enough to till. It's just not dry enough to till quite yet. But he went out, got the tillage equipment all set up, ready to go. So, what's the word for it? Calibrated. So that's all good. He should be out tilling next week, I guess, and possibly even getting on with sticking some seed in the ground. Most of the other farmers, YouTube farmers I'm watching, all of whom are American these days, not a significant amount of seeding at the moment. The cattle farmers in Carolina, I can't remember which one, obviously they're through all of the butchering now. Their main butcher, I can't remember whether he started charging too much or he closed down due to COVID, but they had to change their butcher, and the new one, it doesn't have enough capacity to slaughter all of their cows in one go. So this year they've been taking sort of 8 to a dozen cows to the slaughterhouse, getting them processed, and then picking up the meat, and then a week later they'll take another batch down there. So just concentrate on good. So yeah, they're done with that part of their business. They're gonna have to start seeding. I think they seeded barley in the fall, so they're probably good. They'll be planting. They have planted corn in the past for silage. But a lot of their stuff these days is sorghum for hay for the cows during winter. Less silage. Ooh. Mind the silage additive. But yeah, they're kind of at a slow point in the farming calendar, at least as far as cow farming is concerned, and their cows are free range. Tom Pemberton, he brings his in during the winter. They bring theirs close to the house so that they can feed hay, but they don't have vast barns to keep the cows in over winter. The cows live outside, so that's a thing. Oh, and Tom started putting a roof over his silage clamps. He said he's been talking about it for 3 years. They've actually started doing it. He's losing about 5 foot from one of the clamps so that they can put the roof supports in. His plan had been to use the wall of the barn that is adjacent to the clamp, but that would have cost a ton of money, because I think it was basically you would need to take the roof off the barn, kind of knock the wall down and rebuild it with roof supports and everything else, and then rebuild the roof. And his concrete guy basically said, yeah, that's going to cost you an arm and a leg. So he's like, yeah, okay, we'll lose 5 foot and put the roof supports right along the edge of the barn wall instead, with a little bit of gap for rainwater to run away. But his expectations now are, once the roof is built, he'll be able to keep rainwater off the silage so that it doesn't get waterlogged and you get too much water in it, the edges will be not the greatest. Good enough to feed to the young cows, not good enough to feed to the dairy cows. And he did come back with the results of his maize silage test, or was it, experiment. Turns out that yes, the cows do produce quite a bit more milk when they're on maize silage than when they're on grass silage. So this year he is going to be planting, or having someone plant some maize for him. I also get the impression he may be considering expanding his manure pit, because he picked it to be a certain size, and might be a bit short, because he's got the separator as well, which separates out the solid matter from the slurry. So the slurry will go through the slurry tank easier because there's less solid matter in it, and you get a very fine grade of manure coming out of the separator, and that needs, he's producing quite a lot of that, so that kind of needs a lot of capacity, storage capacity. And his manure pit, I mean, it's big, but I think underestimated how much he would actually need. So yeah, that's all the farming people. Train stuff, not a lot going on there. I want to get down to the basement this afternoon, assemble the last 2 benches, and then I think I've got to sit down with some simple CAD software to plot out some of the track structures that I need, so I can print them out and then use them as a guide for cutting the baseboards, the actual flat surfaces. Obviously, I'd like to be ready to do that as soon as possible, but with the rain recently, this last week has been a little bit wet. Interestingly, the fun was, while it rained early in the week, we got the potatoes planted on Thursday, and then there wasn't any rain due until 10 o'clock on Friday, so Mrs. Osa had to water the potatoes. But and then it rained all of Friday night through this morning, so the ground is all rather damp today. But I think we're kind of good for rain at the moment, but then we've got 3 or 4 days next week where we're expecting rain showers, actually thunderstorms. But yeah, it is what it is. But I don't take power tools out onto the patio to cut wood when there's thunderstorms and lightning and all sorts of things that don't mix well with power tools. Unless you want spiky hair and to look like Alfred Einstein. But I've only got one 4x4 sheet of plywood, so that's not going to go far. I will have to buy some more. I bought 4x4 because it's something I can handle on my own, and it's relatively easy to cut. I didn't want a 2x4 because 2 4x4 foot, because one, it's a little bit small, it's a little bit more expensive per square foot than a 4 foot by 4 foot, and it's not big enough for some of the sections I need to cut. But once I've got the wood started, I can then buy some foam board and mount that on top. And then I think I've got a 50-foot roll of cork, which I'm going to use as the final track bed. Then I can put track down. Then I can put electricity on the track. And then I can play trains. And do scenery, which will be fun. But I've kind of held off on a lot of sort of finer modelling. When I buy something from the UK, I'll get it out, I'll put it on a test track, which is a tiny 2x4. Yeah, probably 2x4 loop. So I can run the trains around and make sure everything works properly. But I'm not putting DCC chips in them or anything like that. So they're kind of... Ooh, go on. You can do it. You can't do it. Okay, we'll just keep going forwards. But yeah, once I've got track up and available and a big circle to run things around, I'll start concentrating on more detailed work. DCC control is effectively computer control of your trains, so you can run multiple trains on the same track at the same time. The old days of DC, you would have sections of track that you could isolate from the power supply. So, and then you just had to make sure that you only had one train on the powered section of track. And these days you don't have to isolate them because the trains have basically a sort of computer control system that will only feed power to the motor when it gets an instruction to do so, and then it will continuously feed power to the motor until you tell it to stop or you hit the emergency stop button, and then everything comes to a grinding halt. But hopefully, if everything goes well, famous last words, maybe sometime by summer I will have trains moving in my basement that aren't in boxes being carried around. At least that's the general plan. Why didn't that pick up? I don't know. Trying to think what else we've got going on. We've finished all our agricultural construction for this year. Which is a good thing. Yeah, we're not picking that up for some reason. I think the ground is a little bit too uneven at that point. I also need to get the camcorder out and see if that works. And it's if I've still got cables to plug it into modern computers. If I have, if it is working and I can find it, then I may do a brief recording of what the basement looks like right now, and then see where we go from there later. I'm not sure if I may do what Richard from Everard Junction did, and to a certain extent Jingles. Richard from Everard Junction never intended to be a YouTube star. He recorded his model railway building just so he'd have a record of it and stored it on YouTube. Jingles never intended to be a YouTube star. He decided to record his World of Tanks battles and post the good ones on YouTube, just because, and people started watching both of them, and now they have thousands of followers, and it worked out. I may do sort of a model railway building diary and post the videos to a different channel on YouTube. But at this stage I don't have any serious plans to do a video a week or a video a month or whatever. I know sometimes Richard in the past has done a video a week, or he will do a project on his railway and then record a batch of videos and release them in rapid succession, but then he could go a couple of weeks with nothing happening. These days he just does March update, April update, May update, just doesn't a monthly update to say this is what I did in the preceding month. And still it's usually a project. This month I worked on the scrapyard, this month I worked on the station buildings, this month I worked on the shopping arcade, and just different aspects. He keeps moving around, so he keeps his interest up, but I think it also helps to keep the interest of the viewers up, because he's not doing the same thing over and over again. He's got a different thing each week or each month. And then occasionally he gets to the point of, well, the scrapyard's been looking like this for the last 2 years, and to be fair, I could do better, so I'm going to pull some of it up and change bits of it. And again, keeps people's interest, because he's doing he's doing something he did before, but he's doing it better this time. And then some months is sort of I've got a new set of passenger cars